Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Our OP's neighbors are trying to intimidate her so they can have their way. It sounds like they were trying to gaslight her and hope she didn't research it. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. I will not pay to have a well removed on my property so a neighbor can replace the septic tank. We're having an issue with our next door neighbor. Little background, we're cordial but not friends. We bought our house 8 years ago. They may be 14. They own a construction landscaping company and have trucks and workers coming on our residential street daily, I assume to pick up work orders. Over the years, they've done extensive landscaping to their backyard using our side yard to get there because they built a huge deck so close to the property line. Absolutely gorgeous landscaping. The last 2 years, they started to work on adjacent side yard, and we noticed they planted small palms in front of our sprinklers. Long story short, they thought they had approximately 6 to 8 more feet than they had. This came to light when they moved our sprinklers over when we said something about them planting in front of them. Neighbor approached husband a few weeks ago that they needed a new septic tank and our unpermitted well was within 50 feet and would need to be moved. Hubby says we'll move it if you pay for it. She says, well, it may be an issue since you don't have a permit. We make a few calls, our realtor makes a few calls for us to septic company owner, it's a small town, and she tells us they can apply for a variance. It had to be permitted, etc., etc. We aren't worried. Neighbor knocks on door and hubby and I speak to her. She asks if there's any way we can work with her and her husband because, yes, they can apply for a variance, but it costs $1,800 and there's no guarantee the county will approve it. She asks if we can just move our well. Hubby says we will if you pay for it. She says she shouldn't have to since we don't have a permit. This is where I may have been an a-hole. I did raise my voice and told her we weren't paying for anything. You're trying to make your problem our problem. She said it was our problem because the county now knows we don't have a permit, so they may make us move it. We said we talked to some people and we weren't worried. And I again said, your problem, not ours. Stop trying to make it our problem. She said we may bring legal action. We said do what you have to do and slammed the door. We found our copy of the permit that former owners left us, by the way. Her passive-aggressive threat of the permit pissed me off and I did raise my voice to her. I think they should consider themselves to be fortunate that you allowed them to walk through your land in order to get to theirs. That was very neighborly of you. And our second story. Complain about an imaginary vibration? Enjoy your noise. Throwaway account. This story happened very early in my career as a professional mechanic. It happened at a chain tire shop in the smallish town where I grew up. It was probably 2002 or so at this point. Customer comes in driving a late 1990s Mercedes-Benz E-Class, which is their middle-of-the-road sedan. He wanted 4 tires installed, and he wanted them as quick as possible. I'm very busy. So me and a coworker I shall call Boomhauer, he talked like the character by the same name from King of the Hill, teamed up and got the tires installed in record time. I think it took us something like 18 minutes to mount and balance all 4 tires, a job that'd normally take close to an hour with the machinery we had available to us. Customer pays his bill and leaves. He comes back half an hour later, complaining of a horrible vibration, yelling at the top of his lungs that we don't know how to do our jobs and we're all incompetent and how he's going to own the store and have us all fired and all sorts of other empty threats. Now, normally I don't really care what the customers think of me, since I work in the back and generally speaking don't have to deal with them. This customer, however, came into the shop to scream at us. The boss eventually got him out of the shop and paid to have a taxi take him home so we could spend some time diagnosing his car. Now, the boss used to be a police officer for nearby local county, and he doesn't take crap from anybody, so he went to the dollar store and bought a little bag of super balls. You know, the little rubber balls that when you drop them from about waist height, they jump over your head? He told Boomhauer and I to put 3 or 4 of them inside each tire on that Benz and make sure the tires are properly balanced and then park it outside. So we did. Now, you're probably wondering why we put super balls inside the tires. We test drove the car and it didn't have any vibrations except on one particular stretch of road that's more pothole than road. There was nothing wrong with the work that we'd done to this a-hole's car originally. The super balls didn't weigh enough to affect the balance of the tires in any way, and centrifugal force will hold them in place while the car's moving. When it comes to a stop, however, the balls will continue to move, making a very strange noise that will drive some people crazy. Also, since they're made of rubber, they won't damage the wheel or the tire, so other than the noise, the super balls are harmless. I don't know if the guy ever got the noise taken care of, but he never came back to the shop. I love the thought of him bringing the car in for service due to the noise and the tech finding super balls in the tires. And our last story. HOA President Karen polluting the river. So some quick backstory to this. I don't live with an HOA, thank the divines, but I have had dealings with them. I studied environmental engineering in college and have a degree with a specialization in water treatment systems. Normally, though, that's not my day job. Even so, recently, a friend of mine who works with one of the neighboring cities asked me if I wouldn't mind doing some tests for water pollution in a waterfowl preservation area. There had been some strange die-off events going on, and the city was trying to figure out where the source of the pollution was coming from. I'd be operating under a special contract from the city and was given access to any location along this waterfowl area, within reason, to perform my tests. I won't go into detail about how the tests work. They're involved and can be a pain in the butt, but suffice to say that I started taking water and soil samples from likely sources along the waterfowl preserve's borders. This showed me that there was a notable amount of nitrates and phosphates in the water, which I surmised was affecting the birds. Now to find the source. I followed the river up its length, passing a number of housing sites, a couple of apartments, and the odd settling pond. Over the course of several weeks and a barrage of tests, these were ruled out as sources. The further I went up the river, though, the stronger the concentrations became, to the point that it was dangerous for humans to even be in contact with the water. We're talking Superfund type pollution. This was last summer. As I waded up along this area, I heard some splashing and the sounds of kids playing in the water. Not good at all. Turning the bend, I come face to face with a small dock leading into the water and 4 or 5 kids taking turns jumping off it into the water. The heavily polluted, dangerous water. There's some lady sitting on the dock watching them, and I approached her. I forget the exchange, but it boiled down to me telling her I'm from the city, and based on some of what had been found, the children were banned from swimming in the river. The lady tried arguing the point until I told her I was calling the marshal, code enforcement, to have the area barricaded off so she could explain her complaints to him. She grabbed the kids and scuttled off. Marshal did arrive, found that the dock wasn't built with proper code standards, and condemned it, forcing the HOA who'd built it to have it demolished within the week, or the city was going to do it and they'd front the bill. That still left the matter of the pollution. That's where things got weird. Once I passed this HOA subdivision, all pollution vanished. I must have done 5 or 6 further tests to verify this, but yeah, no pollution. So I had my culprit. The next question was figuring out what they were doing. That's where my investigative side comes in. With the help of the marshal, I started going around the properties of the HOA, talking with residents. It was a few simple questions like, do you know if they're fertilizing the grass, and when they do this, and do you know the type of fertilizer they use? Just gathering evidence. Remember the lady from earlier? Turned out she was the HOA president. I only found this out after she called the police on the marshal and I, reporting strange men wandering around her neighborhood. She called them something like 4 times in a day before the police flat out told her, they work with the city, and if you keep calling, we're charging you. That didn't stop her from following us around in her car and taking photos with her phone. Eventually, we spoke with one older gentleman that broke the case, as it were. The HOA president had been fining people for not having perfectly green grass. We were in a drought at the time, so that's no surprise there. After several of the people in the subdivision got fined by the city for watering their grass, she'd taken matters into her own hand. She'd first tried contracting a landscaper to spray the lawns with fertilizer, but due to various EPA regulations, he'd apparently refused. The homeowner couldn't be certain what the lady had done next, but a couple of days after that, some guys turned up with a large farm-type trailer of liquid and sprayed every single foot of grass the HOA controlled, even right down to the water's edge. With the homeowner's permission, I took several soil samples from around his property and then samples from the common area that joined the grassy area beside the river and dock. It took about a week to get full results back, but I had my answer. This lady had some contractors or someone spraying farm-grade fertilizer on the grass. This particular fertilizer is heavily controlled by the EPA and requires a special license to even possess, much less use. I presented all my evidence to my contact at the city and laid out just how serious the damage was and that I was legally obligated to report the HOA to the state regulatory board for gross violations. My contract took the papers and paid me for my services, thanking me, but also noting that if this went to court, I would need to testify about my findings. Epilogue. The court was originally scheduled for March of 2020, but it never came to that. The HOA president entered a plea deal with the state where she and the HOA was required to pay for the environmental cleanup of the river, as well as restitution to the state. The fines alone topped close to $250,000, and the cleanup, still ongoing, is expected to break $1 million itself. The HOA president got the boot, while the HOA itself was, last I heard, facing being dissolved by the state due to multiple cases of negligence and inept management. I don't know how they came in contact with that fertilizer, though I suspect some of the charges against the HOA president had something to do with that. You want to know the sad thing, though? If the HOA had simply contacted the city or the state, they would have been given a list of approved fertilizers to use, which both wouldn't have polluted the surrounding water and wouldn't have put them on the hook for an environmental disaster. The number's right on the city and state's website. The HOA just couldn't be bothered to look it up. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.